So what's not written on the paper is what I want to just introduce to you, and then we can open it up for Q&A. I started DISH back in 2000, spring of 2000, at a pivotal point in my career. As you can see, I'm a degreed math and engineering major, but realized pretty early on, I'd say about 3 to 4 years in, that that was not the pure career path I wanted to take. And I know there's an interest in putting girls in STEM, and I do think that's really important, but I would also say what's even more important is making sure your skills and interests also match the desired career path. So it was at that juncture that I said, you know what, I don't want to sit in front of a computer all day. I like interacting with people, solutioning, solving problems. So I went back to graduate school, and actually EchoStar was my first job postgraduate. And I took a long time to find that position. I actually quit my job, went back to graduate school for a short, and then we moved out to Cheyenne, Wyoming, actually, military spouse. And I worked with a partner to find where the companies within Colorado, Wyoming that have sales engineering needs, where I can use my technical background and also my desire to get introduced to the business side, work with people. And it was a sales engineering role within the, it was then called Satellite Services out of Riverfront back in 2000. So that's where I started. My role was to support the private networks, the private satellite networks that we used to host. For those of you who have been around, Anheuser-Busch was one of the biggest clients back then. And I worked on the team that would go out to the sites, make sure we did site surveys, we installed the product, and that the two-way satellite network worked for their retailers that they were training. So I'd say about 6 months in, my boss, Polly Dawkins, realized, I guess, the leadership potential that I had, because she quickly asked me to manage the team that did that. So then I got my own little team of about 4 or 5 that we managed those networks. And I would say that is what started my path from a leadership perspective. So I didn't get a lot of time to work as a classically trained sales engineer, and sometimes I regret that. But I would say that the leadership path has been terribly fortuitous for me, because it helped me meet people, learn how to work with and for people, and be a part of a team. Fast forward, I left the company actually for a year, and we can talk about that later in your Q&A, just for a year, and worked in Wyoming. And then we decided to start our family, moved to Colorado Springs, and then I came back to EchoStar in 2002. That time I was working as a business analyst. I was hired to come back to, if any of you have been around, I worked on the SBC and Earthlink DSL deals where we were selling the bundle. So it was my job to get the SBC deal done, figure out how to sell it, what's the pricing, and all of the plumbing that needed to go with that, which was fun because it introduced me to a side of the business that I had never been exposed to. How do you do a deal that size? How do you make sure operationally it gets implemented? And how do you not leave a sea of dead bodies in the process? So that's always the challenge. So I actually found my love for business development at that point. And then was, because of that, given the opportunity to do the Sirius deal. So that was one that I think where opportunity met preparedness, because Mark Jackson said, here, go figure out how to launch these channels on our satellite service. And you know, at the time, we had a pretty vast roadmap of what we thought it should look like. It wasn't just the channels on Dish Network. It was, how do we, engineering-wise, build hardware that can receive the channels in the car, and what are the offshoots from there? So I would really say that that's where I learned my love for the contract, the business side of the house, while also applying my technology breadth and knowledge from there. Then you talk about, again, where opportunity meets preparedness. We had Bell Television. At the time, they were Bell ExpressView. And the director, I think he was, Doug McGarry, left the company. And it was interesting because I sat in my cube upstairs in 90 doing my work, and I see, for those of you who know him, Cronny Killaroo was pacing outside of my cube. And I'm like, he's pretty, he can be intimidating. He's probably one of the larger mentors that I've had through the years. But at the time, he just pokes in and says, "Are you interested in running the Bell, relationship and want to take that over?" Yes. And what else do you say? So I would say that what that told me was a number of things. It was that, do the best job that you can with what you're given. There's no task too small, but also that people are watching. Whether you think they are or not, they are watching the work product. And you're working with others in a cross-functional, I'd say, a manner that you're proving, you're evaluating and developing your political currency. And what is that? Well, that says that I've worked with Cindy before, and Cronny could go to Cindy and say, "Hey, what do you think about Janet?" And she'll give me a good feedback to him. So I think I would say that was pivotal for me. Took over and it was just me and another young lady who ran the Bell deal, and we grew it to about a $200 million a year business. So working within ETC and now Dish Technologies, I will say, gives us the ability to have our own little business, if you will. We have sales, we have marketing, we have engineering, and we have P&L responsibility. So it's nice to be able to have full control of the success or failure of your products and services. Grew the Bell relationship, but also picked up Dish Mexico in the process. And in the meantime, we also spun off from Dish. This was 2008, and I think the Dish Mexico deal was done fall of '08, right? And we launched it in early 2009. So at that point, in comes a whole host of new types within EchoStar who were sales experts. So that's when I was hired. I was put under VP of Sales, Michael Hawkey at the time. So then I get exposed to the real sales side. Always worked in business development, but then really got exposed to how to go and become a blue-blooded salesperson. I learned a lot from Michael. Built a rapport with him over the years, and so much so that in 2013, at the time we were in near Atlanta, Georgia, I was called to come back and move back to Colorado because Michael was broadening his scope and they needed someone to come here and run the sales and marketing team. So that was my trajectory in terms of how I went from sales engineer to business development to sales, and where I have the team I'm running now. I would say, I was talking to Michelle before this, and it's not that STEM is not interesting to me. It's not that it's not something we need to pay attention to for the young boys and girls that are coming up. But I will say that you've also got to be willing to raise your hand and take tasks and assignments that don't necessarily fit with where you thought your career was going to go. That's what I've learned. As long as I can learn and contribute to the organization to make more money and improve the bottom line, I'm up for it, if you think I'm capable of it. And so being a team player means that. And so that's my story here. I'll just open it up to you for questions or anybody.
So I'd like to talk a little bit, just because I happen to know who your mom is, and I think I'm going to let you talk about her, but how did you get into engineering? I assume she had a fairly large influence on that. And then what did that have in terms of a skill set influence on your leadership style today?
So my mother and father are educators by early career trade. My father was a physics teacher, science teacher, my mother a math teacher. She was really good in math. And so what I would say is, it's not so much that she steered me into engineering. She taught me that you shouldn't be afraid of math. Right? There was never anything I couldn't do. I had the confidence. Folks used to come over to my house to get help with their math, and when we were in high school for calculus, et cetera. So I never had that apprehension. And I'll say that even with my kids these days, you hear, if there is a teacher in the classroom who doesn't like math, doesn't like teaching it, or is intimidated by it, that comes through to the kids. And it regenerates itself over and over again, such that we raise a whole generation of women or boys who are afraid of math. I didn't have that. I was given, the world is your oyster. Go enjoy that. And so I would say that was number one. But number two, I did have high school teachers who steered us in that way. If you were a young girl who's interested in math and science, they almost assuredly put you in engineering because of the lack of women represented in that space. I had summer internships every year in high school with local engineering firms. So it was just part of my rearing, so that it was the expectation. I didn't think I was doing anything differently than anybody else. You talk about how did that prepare me for a leadership role. Again, I think going through engineering school, the rigors of all of that, and being in a class where I'm one of either the only black or the only female or one of few, you have to have confidence in yourself. And I think that's where my early breeding ground was for that. But from a leadership perspective, I also like people. I enjoy working with, working for, and leading teams to accomplish goals, because I think that's what it's all about. No one is an island, and it's helped me tell my story to others so that I can bring them along.
Great. So you talk about being a minority in a larger sense. When we look at standard business meetings, things that on a daily basis women may walk into, how do you help build your confidence and then build the confidence of women on your team? What does that look like in your job role?
Keep your eyes on the prize. I'm not going to look at my team, but I think they know if as long as we stay true to our craft and know what our goals are. You know, first off, let's sit down and figure out what is it we're trying to accomplish, what is your role and contribution, and go for that, right? The fact that we're the only women, or if I'm the only black in the meeting, that's really not my issue, and that's not why I'm here. I'm here to get my job done. So to the extent that you get in the way of that, you know, we will work through that, but it is not something that we should wear on our sleeves as an excuse or a handicap of sorts, right? It's that tenacity, I think, that allows us to charge through whatever preconceived notions or prejudices that may exist that we don't own. Don't acknowledge it. I had a boss early on at the shipyard who told me, make that their problem, it's not yours. And it stuck with me for that reason, because it gets in the way.
Yep.
And it shouldn't. So.
Cool. So when you look at your toolkit and what you use kind of on a daily basis as an executive that you feel like women and men could go out and work on developing specifically in the dish environment, what are kind of the top things that you feel like have helped you get to this point?
Know your business. And I don't want to sound cheesy, because I know that's one of our, but it means, I cannot tell you how often credibility is lost if you just don't know your business. And it's easy to get derailed early on. You talk about political currency. It's easy to build a negative reputation if you're known for one who doesn't know their business. And it gets even harder the more you move up and you have larger teams, and you've got to understand enough about what everyone's doing to be able to drive. So I would say know your business through and through. As women, have a voice, right? This is a tough, tough, tough environment. I don't have to tell some of you what it's like sitting in meetings, and you may not have anything to say. You need to find something to say. If you're in the meeting, chances are you're supposed to be there, so have a voice and say something. Let people hear you. I have battled a number of conversations where either I or someone on my team was labeled a wallflower. It's not due to any fault of your own, but I think we all need to figure out a way to have a voice in whatever form we're in to, acknowledge, yes, we're here, yes, we're listening, and we have something to say, for sure. Finally, and I touched on this earlier, but Dish, EchoStar, Dish Technologies we're not personnel heavy. We don't get to hire large staffs to get our job done. I was just telling you, my staff is probably about 50% lighter than it was a year ago. So you have to rely on others in the company to get your job done. You just have to. You cannot do it alone. Well, the way you get things done is by exploiting that political currency, right? So if I'm asked to do something that has nothing to do with my job or what I contribute on a day-to-day basis or I'm rated on, if I know that Lisa, sitting in the back, needs help on that, I'm going to help her, right? And hopefully she'll repay that. But I think we have to remember that no man is an island. You're going to need others within this organization to get your job done, and so therefore you've got to remember that. And no one's saying be overly political about that, but it's certainly, you need to keep that in mind as you navigate. And I would say those are the big things. Everything else is assumed. There's an assumption that we're hiring the right people, that you have the right motivation, the right skill set. Beyond that, I think that's what I've learned more than anything being here.
Great. You mentioned a mentor earlier. How has mentorship impacted your career? And then what do you see as kind of your role as a mentor within EchoStar and Dish?
Yeah. All of my bosses, I would say, have been a mentor to me. I don't know that I've had any bad bosses here. But I would also say that there have been people who recognized what I had early on and have pulled me along, right? My first promotion was because of a mentor, because they recommended me. I would say this last promotion was because an executive recognized something in me and said yes, you know. So it is very important. What I would also say, though, is that it's not a formal relationship. It just doesn't have to be. It can be organic, right? You can have peers, partners, or people that you've been exposed to that you know are an expert in X, and seek them out. Ask their advice. Take them to coffee, right? Learn that, because that's how they learn you, you learn them, and then they'll want to help you. The worst thing you can do is ask someone very blindly, will you be my mentor? Because that's not really true to what it means, right? That person has to want to help you, and you have to respect them enough to want to have that symbiotic relationship. So I would say in large part, and certainly within the Dish culture, means a lot, because when there are promotion discussions, it's not just your boss who's talking about you. It's the other people in the company cross-functionally who get to weigh in on who you are, what you can contribute, and how you work. So it's very important. In terms of my mentoring, I try to support as much as I can. I have a team that I try to mentor on a day-to-day basis, and again, it's not always overt. Sometimes it's just in the lessons we learn on a day-to-day basis. So I view it as very important to show what you need to do, how to chart the course, and how to be successful the best way I know how. Now, whether you accept that or not, right, is another issue, but I always view it as my charter to do that, to men or women.
Great. So I'd like to talk a little bit with you about this whole high-powered career and moving regularly, having a husband who also is very active in his work, and how you guys are raising your family, and what does that look like for you?
Chaos. No, it's actually pretty fun. One thing we're not afraid to do is talk about, my husband and I, talk about what the needs are and how we're going to navigate a dual income household that has young children. Our kids are 12 and 15. But we've been moving since 2000, every 2 to 3 years. This is the longest time we were talking this week, I would say Georgia was the longest time we ever lived in a house, and that was at 6 or 7 years. So we had to learn pretty quickly how to establish support systems, know what you need, know what you could do, and then put together a network to make sure everything ran smoothly. It's been tough. I'm not going to tell you it's for the faint of heart, but if you're in a job that you love most of the time and like sometimes, and have the support of your husband, your family, you can make it happen. And that's how we've done it. I've got, Marcus is a retired 20-year Air Force veteran. So I can remember moving from Colorado to Georgia, staying with the company EchoStar at the time, and then he goes off to an 8-month deployment to Djibouti, Africa. And I don't know what to do. And I have a full-time job working 40 miles from my house one way. I had a 3-hour total commute in and out of work with, at the time, a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. So they were little boys. I got help, right? But part of the mental challenge is getting over the thought that you have to do it all yourself. You don't. right? So, you know, we were fortuitous enough to be able to get my mother to come. You know, she came and moved in with us for a short. We hired help so that we could get that done. If you don't have that available to you, you know, I guess my advice would be make sure that your lifestyle, your job, your station in life, and everything that you do fits what you need it to do, right? And by that I mean, don't overextend yourself in one area to the detriment of another. Everything needs to work together for the good of your family, you know, and I don't mind saying, this place, if you die on the job, they're going to step over you and they're going to keep going. And if that's shocking to any of you, you need to check yourself, because that, and I just, it's harsh, but it's a reality, and it helps me focus on what I need to. So you talk about how do we make it all happen? It's a juggle. Besides the support, you've got to juggle your priorities. You know, the comment about having it all. Jackie Hinman said, you can have it all, just not at the same time. My thought is very similar. I, every day, have to prioritize what's important, what do I have to get done, what can move to tomorrow, next week, next day, and let's just focus on that. You can't get overwhelmed by the next month, because you may not have the next month, so let's just figure it out one day at a time. So I would say support system, knowing truly what you can do and what you can impact, and then juggling those priorities the best way you can. That's how we've done it, and it's hard. It's hard.
Great. So we're going to do a couple of rapid fire questions before we open it up.
All right.
And these are more fun ones. You guys can feel free to add on. What are you reading right now?
You know what? I'm ashamed to admit I've become a Game of Thrones junkie. And but I'll tell you, as they're wrapping up this season, like the whole Jon Snow being a Targaryen, I missed that. So I went and bought Son of Ice and Fire, the book one, and so I'm trying to go back and learn. So that's what I'm reading for fun now, just trying to get the foundation for what's going on, because I don't want it to end and I don't know.
Except I think the books are behind now. So
they are behind, but the fact that he's the Targaryen, does anyone know?
Spoilers.
Like, tell me, Michelle.
It was inferred during when she was speaking to him. Yeah.
Really? See? So see, I didn't, and that's what and so I knew I missed that. So anyway, I'll have to consult.
The last one of the last season, or the first one of this season is where
that came out. Yes.
It was literally like you may have run and grabbed a glass of water.
Exactly. Or wine. Exactly. So anyway, that's my guilt. Just go watch that episode. Right.
Okay, what is your favorite quote?
There is always something to be thankful for. I want to maintain and rear in my children a spirit of gratitude, thankfulness, and if you approach life, work, family that way, you don't get bogged down in the negativity. So that's it's mushy, but that's my favorite quote.
Good one. What's on? Well, I think we may already know this, but what's on your Netflix continue watching?
No, because I have HBO. Netflix, Breaking Bad. So I was late to the party on that, but I am catching up. Nikki tells me it's only 5 seasons, so I don't have to binge for long. But I really appreciate the fact that this is a chemistry teacher and just how he was a good guy, and he's navigating and he's becoming dark. But it's a really good series, so that's all mine.
What are you excited about at work right now?
You know, I talked about, I would say Sling Studio. And while we're all working very hard to make it successful, I enjoy being an entrepreneur within Dish, because we get to work closely with product. We've devising our own marketing plan, figuring out channel sales strategy, and we're able to do that within our own little microcosm. Yes, we impact the larger Dish, and we're working to I guess, expand into the retailer base however we can, but that is the most exciting to me. If I can't contribute to delivering programming to consumers within the broader Dish Network or Sling TV, I'd say this is a top priority, and it's fun.
Good. And final one, most inspirational woman in your life?
I don't just have one.
Multiple.
Yep. In thinking about this, I would say I love Meryl Streep. She is the epitome. She's an expert in her craft. She is true to who she is, and she's an advocate and very politically, I'd say, grounded. And for that, I appreciate her. Love her, love her. Rosalind Brewer, who's the former CEO of Sam's. She's actually a Spelman grad. She was one of the few black women CEOs that existed in Fortune 500 companies. So she, because I'm a Spelman grad, was always someone that I looked at as a role model for what could be accomplished. And then finally, my mother. I think that what she's demonstrated to me is that you can be good at your job and a good mother and have well-adjusted children in spite of all that. She showed me the way, and I appreciate that, because a lot of young ladies don't have that vision, and so for that I'm thankful that I had her to help chart my course.
Do you want to give a teaser on her talk in November?
Sure. So my mother is Christine Darden. She's a retired aerospace engineer at NASA. And I'm from Hampton, Virginia. And so the book and the movie, Hidden Figures, was based on my hometown. NASA is in my hometown, and my mother was a human computer. She's in the book. She wasn't in the movie because she was after the space race, but she actually was able to achieve quite a, I'd say, an impressive career at NASA. She retired as a PhD, or a Doctor of Science in Aerospace Engineering, with a focus on fluid mechanics and sonic boom minimization. Anyway, what that, sorry. So, she was, through a friend over at Dish Technology, Steve Casagrande. Charles Schwab has invited her in November to come and speak to their women's network, which we're excited about. But I put a bug in Michelle's ear and said, well, if she's here, do you want her to come here? So she agreed. And so that's what, the first week of November?
First week of November. So you'll get details as that comes out. But we did host the screening of Hidden Figures earlier this year. For those of you who were able to come, that was a really great event. And so now this will be a really cool follow-up for that. So keep an eye out for more details. But yes, a legacy of great women in this family. So we're extremely happy to have Janet here, and I'll open it up for your guys' questions. She's one of our women execs here, so some unique perspective for you guys specific to Dish.
Hi, Lisa. Oh, do you want me to choose?
You choose.
Oh, Lisa. Yep.
You have a stellar reputation for being able to build high-performing teams. What are some of your secrets to being able to do that?
The right candidates. I am one who, in the interview process, I don't try to sugarcoat what we have here, what it's like here, because then you're setting yourself up for failure. So step one is making sure that the paw is present, but also that you're realistic about what to expect here. Charlie talks about it, Vivek talks about opportunity. I sell that, right? And the person who sees that as a benefit to working here. There's very often, or not very often, I'm told, or my people are told, they can't do something. No, it's about how you're going to navigate and get it done. And so the opportunity, and I would say just continuing to look them in the eye, make sure they're okay, and make sure you're giving them what they need, right? I'm more of a servant leader than anything, Lisa, and I think that that has helped me connect with my teams to make sure that I'm giving them what they need to be successful. Doesn't mean I lower the bar, right? Because you got to be tough. We've got a lot to do with, like we said, not as many resources as we'd like sometimes. But if you've made sure that they've got the right foundation, the right expectations, I think you're setting yourself up for success. So, yes.
So which sort of skill set would you recommend to people that sort of aspire to move up, that they sort of focus on in at home, I guess, in terms of, like, if they wanted to go into management, what could make them like a better manager? What should they kind of focus on? I know there's the whole like social capital thing, but I think that oftentimes, like, we're all sort of mentored as playing nice with other people, but
This is an offshoot of Know Your Business, but the financials are key, right? We just had our earnings call last week. To me, every one of you in here should be able to pick up that 10Q, 10K. Maybe you're not a finance major, but you can pretty much understand the business as a whole, but also where your role contributes to that, and keep that at the forefront. So often we're afraid of the numbers, or we don't pay attention to the numbers, or that we let the numbers happen to us. No, my team knows you need to know your numbers. You need to know what the expectations are for your team and how that contributes. So if I had to say one thing, it would be that. And the skill set, don't be afraid to speak up. You've got a voice. And if you've done everything else, have the confidence to speak up and fight for what you think the right thing is to do. And be tenacious. Because what this company also is known for is you got to ask. You can't just ask once and think someone's going to help you or do it. You got to ask 2 and 3 times, because not always they want to make sure that you really need what you're asking for if they're going to impart those resources. So that would be my short list. Yes?
You talk a lot about interviewing and finding the right candidates. Do you have any advice for your favorite funky or unique questions during interviews to really get to understand a candidate?
You know, no funky questions, unfortunately. I think I was reared in the behavioral interviewing, and so what would you do in a situation like this? So it's not terribly funky or interesting, but I find that those questions reveal so much about the candidate's thought process, how they solution or make decisions, their logic, and all of that. So I'm not terribly funky, but I think it's been effective.
So I have one. Sling Studio.
Yes.
What's next? What's down the roadmap?
Next? So we are ending Sling Studio. For those of you who don't know, if you look around the room and you see those little bricks sitting on top of the cameras, those are called camera links, and they're a part of the larger Sling Studio product back in the corner that are, it's a multi-camera wireless streaming unit. It allows you to take a video production truck and condense it to that product along with the camera adapters to live stream multi-camera video to Facebook, YouTube Live, and we're about to launch a feature that allows you to stream to your own personal platform if you like. We launched in May 22nd, so August 22nd will be 90 days in. We've had a exclusivity partnership with B&H Photo Video out of New York, and so they've been our only partner at the moment, so I'm excited about the next couple of weeks because we'll be expanding to Tier 2 retailers and have more retail placement, but also I'm getting to spend money on marketing. So you'll start to see more activity there, but we wanted to take the first 90 days, as I was talking about the personas with you, we wanted to make sure we were going after the right market. Sling Studio is not a mass consumer product. If you're saying, why is Dish even investing in a product like this? It's because that Sling Studio encompasses years of expertise and technology that we've developed homegrown, and it's merely a tangential application. The chipset in that hub is a Hopper 3 chipset. So, you know, you had your Sling guys who were thinking outside the box saying, how can we leverage what we know in that product? Streaming video and adjustable bit rate streaming of video, that's what we do. That's our expertise, and so we've just applied it elsewhere. So be on the lookout for more advertising. I would say I'm talking to a retailer, a premier retailer, Gary Young of Young Ideas, on how to help a high school in his neck of the woods stream their football games, with the goal being, let's utilize this retailer force that we have to figure out how in their communities they can push this product. We've got to be talking to the churches, the corporations, and the schools to really push volume, and that's what's on the next platform for us. So, yes?
Janet, you started as a business analyst and now you're a VP. Is this something that you kind of saw in your own plan for yourself? And what do you see coming up next?
You know, no, I didn't see it. I have have always wanted to do a good job, the best job I could. Yes, I've had to fight for promotions in some cases, but I use the word fight loosely. It's more demonstrate to my bosses and peers that look at what I've done. I should be promoted and lauded for that. So no, I can't tell you that I saw myself coming to this juncture. From here, I am excited to learn about the broader dish and what opportunities there are. We were kept separate and not exposed to all the good things going on in this company. So in this side of the company, Greater Oregon Empire. And so I'm hopeful that there are opportunities that can leverage my skill set beyond Sling Studio and beyond Bell TV. So that's the hope. Hi, Rebecca.
What's been the most difficult part of your career?
The work-life balance, the guilt, right? It's, I talk about the juggling, I talk about the support system, I talk about making sure you set priorities properly, but at the end of the day, there's always that tug. I'll tell you a story. I said I wasn't going to tell this, but I am. We had just moved to Atlanta, and my youngest son, was 2 years old. And I was working on a huge Bell deal at the time. It was an 18-month deal. It was pretty important, and it was coming to the point where, I got an email from Charlie himself saying, you're going to get this done by this date, right? At the same time, my 2-year-old had a little growth on his noggin, and it wasn't a health concern, but we wanted to get it looked at, get it removed, and so we scheduled surgery for the day Charlie asked me to be in Toronto for this negotiation. So I went home and I, probably cried, don't remember, but I talked to Marcus and I said, I don't know what to do. And while it was a hard decision, Rebecca, it was one where we sat down as a family and said, well, listen, it's somewhat of an elective surgery. We can reschedule it for the next week, go to Toronto, do that, and come on back so we can take care of our son. That was a hard decision for me. Even now it's hard because you really have to lay it out on the table and pragmatically say what matters right now and what's the best thing for this family and your longer term career. And I think I probably would do the same thing. He's a healthy 12-year-old now and he's just fine. But it's been hard when the rubber meets the road in terms of decision trees related to work and family. It's been hard. So,
could you talk to us? Oh, I think we have one more back there, and then I'll.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about making this shift in your career
Mm-hmm.
And in your education. Talk a little bit more about it. That's a scary thing for some people to do. That shift is probably.
You've got to know yourself, and you've got to know what you're made of, what your goals are, and like I said early on, engineering was something that was put upon me and that I could do, but I never, in hindsight, stood up and said, yes, I want to be an engineer. And so for that, I think the transition for me was, as I grew up and learned more about what I like to do in the workplace, I was able to pivot pretty quickly, right? And I think that's okay. I never wanted external expectations to drive what I did because I had to live with me for the long term. So it was good, and I was fortunate enough to work in a company, this company, that allowed for that, right? I think I talk to a number of people and they say, yeah, I get to work on this, I get to work on that, and oftentimes it's because of what they've proven in the job that they're in. So it's scary, yes, but if you build the right foundation, know what your goals are, personally and professionally, I think it's an okay pivot. And it makes those decisions a lot easier for you. Hopefully, yes.
You've had a long career here, and I'm sure you've gone through ebbs and flows of like, this is great, like I love my job, and you're like, what is one moment that you could think of where you were on the verge of quitting or just giving up, and how did you get over that?
I come back to first principles. And I tell all of my people this. Every morning when you wake up, you say what's good, what's bad, and what's my best alternative, right? And you have to continue to evaluate. Yeah, those times, this last year, I'm not going to lie, has been horrific in terms of the change, keeping a team intact, maintaining my own professional career path, whatever that is. But Dish hasn't let me down yet. And I think that, yes, it's hard, but at the end, I have come out on the positive side of that equation. And when that stops happening, then I'll have to reevaluate. It's the evaluating that you have to do, but you also have got to be realistic about there are good things, you know, and yes, it's hard, but at the end of the day, me, my family, my kids are in a better position for it. So that's how I do it. Yeah.
I was wondering if you could share some strategies with regard to promoting visibility for the individual contributors on your team for when you have success as a team, how you can allocate those contributions individually?
I set the expectations early on that this is, you know, here's the charter, the project, or whatever. Early on, it's not. I'm not too keen on, I'm not an island. I have a team that supports me, and I want to give credit where credit is due. So I don't try to be the front person, right? If this is your project, I want you presenting it to Vivek, to Jeff, to Charlie, if the situation arises to the extent that you're ready. So I'm not afraid to, when they're ready, put them in a position. But I do set the expectations early. I coach and manage the expectations and make sure there are no surprises as best we can. But I'm a big proponent of showing the way and supporting them along the way. So, yeah.
What's something you're trying to grow and develop in one area of your life or something in particular?
Become a better triathlete. So I did the Colorado Triathlon in June, and I'll tell you, I did not. It was a sprint tri. It's not the big one, so I'm not. But it's always been a goal of mine. And
First one ever?
Yes. So it's a half-mile swim. It was about a 19-mile bike ride, and then a 5K. And so I was fine on the 5K, and if all else fails, walk. I was fine on the bike, because it's a bike. The swim, I will tell you, was nothing I had ever experienced, and I was training with a group. So I didn't finish the swim in June. And I said, okay, I knew what I needed to work on, focused on it. Open water swimming is nothing you've ever experienced if you've not done it. And I just finished one the Try for the Cure at Cherry Creek on Sunday. So I'm pretty proud of that, but it's been a goal of mine to complete it, and I did, and I just want to continue going that route. Physical activity has become my whoopee, if you will. That's how I stay sane, and so it's something that I want to continue to work at. So.
Any last questions, guys? No? Well, Janet, thank you so much. We can't wait to see your mother in a couple of months.
Thank you.
And you were a delight, as usual. Anyone who wants to stick around and chat, feel free. We have the room for a little bit longer. And thank you guys all for joining us today over your lunch hour.